Michael Graham, your only licensed and authorized distributor of The Natural Truth. What is the natural truth? It is the way the world really works, whether we want it to or not. It's the world that grown-ups have to deal with, and I have to tell you, I don't think that President Obama's reaction on Friday was a reaction of a grown-up, of someone saying, you know, look, regardless of the wrongs that have occurred in the past, and they certainly have in America, that this case involving Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman just wasn't one of those cases. Instead, President Obama played the juvenile, in my opinion, the juvenile Al Sharpton card like this.
You know, when Trayvon Martin was first shot, I said that this could have been my son. Another way of saying that is Trayvon Martin could have been me 35 years ago.
And in my opinion, that's not a productive way to talk and or to have the conversation, and it implies, the notion that Trayvon Martin was a victim of pure injustice as opposed to the victim of a tragic circumstance where he didn't want to have a problem, Zimmerman didn't want to have a problem, they encountered each other, and it's a shame, it's terrible that it ended up that way. But President Obama then went even one step further.
If a white male teen was involved in the same kind of scenario, that from top to bottom, both the outcome and the aftermath might have been different.
So by taking the Al Sharpton approach, President Obama, instead of being the adult in the room and saying, yes, it is true, there have been historic wrongs against black Americans. Yes, for the vast majority of the time that America's been here, this has been a racist country. But in this case, the facts were there, the TV cameras were there, the jury was there, the judge was there, people bent over backwards to try to put George Zimmerman in jail. This wasn't one of those cases of injustice. This wasn't an Emmett Till case. This was a tragic case, but it wasn't a case of racial injustice. Instead, President Obama has chosen to heighten that message, to spread that message, and I think it's unnecessarily divisive. And it's really been bugging me because, I disagree with the president's politics, but I really didn't think he had to go there. And so I was looking around for some more information, and particularly the fact that there was a rally this past weekend on the event, and I found this fantastic website called Blackstonian.com. And I'll be honest, when I went to the website, I was expecting to see some big, message about more information about the debate over the Trayvon Martin case, et cetera. Instead, they had a graphic that punched me right in the face. And the graphic is in the same style as the One Boston Fund, after the bombing. And it says across the top, shootings in Boston, 89 since the Boston Marathon. And then it asks a question at the bottom, one Boston? And I said, wow, that puts all of this in perspective. The argument over the Zimmerman trial, the argument over the Zarniev magazine cover, that while all that's going on, 89 shootings in Boston. And I found this so compelling and so fascinating that I asked the publisher and editor of Blackstonian to join us, Jamarhl Crawford. Jamarhl, welcome to the show. So glad to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and I'm glad you found our site and found the information on there useful in this regard.
Well, it just raises an issue, and I want to say I want to get your take on something first, not to be too combative right off the bat here, but I'm a little bit annoyed by the people who want to say why we should be talking about black on black crime instead of talking about Trayvon Martin. I personally think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. I think some people are trying to use the issue of black and black crime to get around the Trayvon Martin debate. I think the Trayvon Martin debate stands on its own, which was a tragic case, and it's unfortunate some people are trying to make it polarizing unnecessarily. Do you agree, disagree, your thoughts?
Well, I definitely agree that, there are multiple issues there, and I don't like, the comparison of apples and oranges.
Right,
so,
exactly.
For instance, I've been uncomfortable with the equation of Trayvon Martin's case to something like Emmett Till.
Yeah.
I get what people are trying to do, but I just think it's a poor analogy.
Emmett Till was a victim of plain old-fashioned, we are going to just punish you because you're black, period. I mean, that's what happened there.
Right. There was Klan involvement.
Exactly.
You know.
I mean, whatever Zimmerman did, he may have been an idiot. He may have been overzealous. But, he was, this, to compare Trayvon Martin to Emmett Till, to me, really demeans what Emmett Till stands for and the kind of evil that he confronted, and then the inspiration of that tragedy that caused people to respond to that evil.
Well, we do it all the time. My boss, he's working me like a slave, or something like that. And it diminishes, or when they've used terminology in the thing like, this is a lynching or a high-tech lynching, has been said before. It diminishes those things that happen that have a very, tragic and long-standing history.
Right.
It belittles the people that actually did go through those situations. But for that, and, you being a master of language, I think that it is up to us to lend clarity. So even in your opening comments there, when you said Obama took the Sharpton approach or what have you, I'd like you to kind of clarify what you mean by that.
Because Al Sharpton is chosen to state clearly that if the people involved had been different races, you flip the races around, you get a different outcome. In other words, that that the Zimmerman verdict was because Trayvon Martin was black and Zimmerman was whatever. I thought he was Hispanic. Apparently, there's some other thing. And that is so not true. And for the president to echo those words straight from Al Sharpton, I found it so offensive because he knows better than that. He knows that in this case, everything was revealed. People bent over backwards to make sure that this wasn't you can kill a black guy in Florida and get away with it. George Zimmerman was not a guy who got away with it.
Well, I don't know that I agree with that. And as I've been listening to your show, and talking about, George Zimmerman, took the black girl to the prom and had black friends and all that, you can do all that and interact with black people on a daily basis, even in your family or circle of friends, and you could still act out of a racist mindset, and that's where racial profiling comes in. So if Trayvon might have been dressed in a different manner, in a suit with a briefcase, it wasn't that. So it's not just, a black guy, but it's, a black guy who looks somehow scary or suspicious. But sometimes that doesn't even pan out because, of course, a 50 or 60-year-old Harvard professor got a similar treatment being questioned in front of his door, and he was dressed in casual business attire. Sure. So there is a case here in America, and as you've noted, the historical stuff that goes on and has gone on, I think there is for black America this question that, yes, that we believe that if the race of the victim was different and if the race of the perpetrator was different, we would most likely see a different outcome. Now, we can't test that theory, so we have to look at the data. And the data shows that there's a lot of disparity, of course, in arrests and sentencing. If we just look at something as simple as the war on drugs, white people and black people do just about as much drugs, but black people go to jail at a disproportionate rate than their white counterparts and serve longer sentences. So when we look at some of these cases and how they are ended up being adjudicated, I think that, most black people, even if it may not be in this case, which I believe it is, but let's play devil's advocate and say there was no racial stuff in this case, you certainly have to understand how black America, who has been abused time and time again and let down time and time again and seen injustice after injustice without any results, for, Sean Bell, Rodney King, so on and so forth, these people, most often police officers and sometimes private citizens, tend to get away. And what we're talking about is the devaluation of black life, and that devaluation of black life is something that kind of permeates all those things that we're talking about, from the Trayvon Martin case on to black and black crime and, the number of murders, which is now no longer 89. Sad to report, it is now 93. 93 people shot since the Boston Marathon,
okay, Jamarhl,
and literally we can't post as fast as they shoot.
I'm gonna interrupt you. I feel bad for stepping on that great line. We can't post as fast as they shoot. But I want to interrupt you because I want to get to the shootings in a second. I want to go back, though, and address the great points you've brought up. And we're talking to Jamarhl Crawford. He's the publisher and editor of Blackstonian. Is it the Blackstonian or Blackstonian Magazine? How should I refer to it here? It's
either way, the Blackstonian or Blackstonian is fine, and of course it signifies Black Bostonian.
Right, exactly. The 411 on Black Boston 24/7, which I am not nearly hip enough to say those words normally in public. So thank you for letting me quote your website and do so. So you think that if George Zimmerman had been sitting on top of Trayvon Martin, and Trayvon punched him in the face, and Trayvon Martin had the busted nose and the screwed up head, and Trayvon had shot him, you think that Trayvon Martin would have been prosecuted? You really think that?
number one, I would have to agree with that set of facts. What I can say is this. Here's my major problems with the case. This person is self-appointed. This person was told by the police dispatcher not to follow or pursue. And had he, just went along with those suggestions, his life would be a lot easier right now, and Trayvon Martin would still be with us. And so when we just look at that, and the fact that the reason that Trayvon was quote-unquote suspicious is because he was a black kid with a hoodie in an area that George Zimmerman, in his mind, determined that this young gentleman did not belong or was not supposed to be, and therefore could only be up to no good. I'm not completely satisfied with the set of facts that was presented, and I think, first of all, too, one of the reasons this case went south is because of the horrible, horrible display of lawyering by the prosecution.
See, it's interesting to me because I was just interrupted. I mean, first of all, I ain't prepared to believe that you can absolutely have a case where the bias is against someone because they're black. That can absolutely happen. But man, talk about a case where it didn't happen. They're screaming and yelling at George Zimmerman. The judge hates George Zimmerman. She's beating the crap out of his lawyers. The investigators first showed up and said, look, there's just not enough evidence to overcome a self-defense case because all the stuff you just talked about, Jamarhl, doesn't matter. The only thing that matters, it doesn't matter if Trayvon jumped out of the bushes and punched him first. It doesn't matter if he got out of the car, didn't get out of the car. What matters is, was he sitting on the ground getting his face punched? Yes or no? And if so, would it be reasonable to be afraid for your life? And if you can't say absolutely not, beyond a reasonable doubt, then he walks.
And
this
it's
case,
unfortunate because,
let me
of course,
just say, for Americans who are not looking for an agenda, I want to put it that way, this case seems to be people bending over backwards to try to put George Zimmerman in jail. For you to say, no, they were trying to cover up the shooting and let him get away with it, I got to tell you, most Americans are looking at you going, you got to be kidding me.
Well, here's the thing, and it's kind of never come. Well, I don't say never, but seldom comes up. I'm a 17-year-old kid going home to my father's. Probably got a big night of. He was going to watch the game. I was going to say Xbox, but we know he intended to go home and watch the All-Star game, right? And all of a sudden, some guy who you do not know is following you, as he described to his friend, a creepy-ass cracker, right? So I believe that Trayvon was the one who was in fear, being pursued by a person that had no badge. At no time did he identify himself. Hey, buddy, I'm the neighborhood watch guy. Are you lost? Are you looking for something? Because that could have all dispelled it.
Sure.
So I believe that Trayvon was in fear for his own life and maybe the potential of being kidnapped, being assaulted. There's a lot of crazy people out in the world.
Sure.
So with that 17-year-old young man who, as a teenager, maybe did not utilize the best judgment, because I probably would have made a beeline and ran straight from my father's house and calling, but he stood his ground, so to speak, and dealt with this person who was following him.
Sure.
Now, after that, the question is, does a fist fight, and particularly if you're losing, does that warrant you to get shot?
Mm-hmm. And the law in Florida is, if you think that your life is in danger, and I'll be honest, Jamarhl, if you were sitting on my chest, and I hope if I were sitting on your chest, we'd each think our lives were in danger. It's not an unreasonable thought, and then you pull the trigger. Now, to interject race into that, that's what I don't get. Anybody, a guy is sitting on your chest. He's pounding your head in the ground. It's not unreasonable to think, holy crap, this is not a good thing. This guy might kill me. Does that seem unreasonable to you, regardless of the race of the people involved?
No, because I believe that the race is the factor that led up to that situation and became a factor in why he was, quote-unquote, suspicious or scary or weird or whatever to begin with. And that's where the race comes in. And, you don't have to be a member of the Ku Klux Klan, or Nazi skinhead organization to be this, to have racist ideas. Sure. Racism has permeated every sector in our society, and there is blatant racism and there is also subtle racism.
What kind of racism was re-electing President Obama twice? Which kind would that be?
I mean, I don't know what you mean. You would have to kind of flesh that out a little bit more for me.
There's all this pernicious racism out there in a country that re-elected President Obama and has Eric Holder as the Attorney General and has Deval Patrick as the governor of Massachusetts and has more elected black officials than at any time in history. So this must be some kind of sneaky.
Okay.
This is some kind of sneaky racism, isn't it? Where people run out and vote for the black guy for president, and then go back to their Klan meeting.
Well, clearly there were millions of people who did not vote for Obama,
right.
And as you know from being a columnist at the Boston Herald, you can read any comments that have anything to do with Obama, Duvall, or any black person for that matter, and get a sense of what a lot of people out there are thinking. We know the racial stuff that has been thrown at Obama, everything from being called a monkey, the Muslim stuff, make him prove that he's an American, the whole birther movement, and then not to mention the biggest telltale is that he's had more assassination threats on his life than any president before. I think before that, the most unpopular president was Nixon. And Obama is tapping out at like 300 threats a week, so much so that the Secret Service can't even keep up. So I think those are the undertones that speak to race in the country, not to mention when he campaigned, membership in sort of white supremacist organizations and militias shot through the roof, and you hear the rhetoric that comes from the Tea Party and all that, which is racially coded, and characterizations
I'm sorry.
that have been.
I was there. There was no racial coding. I'm sorry. Saying Obamacare sucks is not racial coding.
Yeah, but
it's
when you
math.
put a bone through his nose and dress him up as a witch doctor and a Photoshop thing, then that's a little bit racist.
You're absolutely right. There are almost as many offensive signs at a Tea Party event as there are at a Trayvon Martin event talking about George Zimmerman, the guy who, quote, identifies as Hispanic because he's lost his race because of the assault of people on him because of this horrible, tragic case. We're talking to Jamarhl Crawford, and can we talk about the 89 number or the 93 number now? Because I'm fascinated by the one Boston strong question that you raise. Tell us about the number, what it means, and why it's at Blackstonian.com right now.
Okay, well, after the marathon, of course, the entire country was shocked by it, and in Boston, of course, it hit home literally. And here, this being the big sports town that it is, very patriotic. Boston is one of those cities that is really really proud of Boston.
Absolutely.
And so when this happened, people started joining hands, and the outpouring of at the memorial and at the site of the bombing, and the push to apprehend these people who did this, and so on and so forth. And there was a sense of unity and a call like, this is not going to be tolerated, not in our Boston. And unfortunately, in Boston and many other cities across the country, that same level of outrage is not displayed when it comes to what I will call regular killings. And when I say regular killings, that even denotes that we've just been desensitized, so that it has to be something that is so out of the ordinary, so sensational that it, captures our minds. But, just the regular killings and the regular violence and the regular crime that occurs almost daily, there is little lip service about it unless there's a big case, like the 4 people that were killed in that home on Wolfson, or the young teenagers that were killed in the basement of the recording studio, or the young girls who were shot in the car, or if it's a child or something. You'll occasionally get this big outpouring, or the choir boy who was on his way to church. You'll get this type of reaction, but by and large, we have become so desensitized that no one cares. So we wanted to put the contrast in there and mark it, because we knew it was going to happen, and mark how many shootings have taken place since that time. And now at 93, I believe we're probably on par to break 100 by August, unfortunately. And what it is the cry for help, and saying that, we need to put some attention and some resources too. The same people, Menino, Duvall Patrick, they called together corporations and so on and so forth to create this one fund to deal with this very specific issue, where you had, about 200 people or so, who were injured, a couple of people who were killed, certainly a lot of loss of limbs and so on and so forth. And what people in my community are screaming for and says, well, why can't Menino and Duvall Patrick put their heads together to do the similar types of thing, dealing with, the violence that occurs in quote-unquote urban communities?
Jamarhl Crawford, let me interrupt you for a second. As a fellow person in the publishing and media business, because you run Blackstone, you'll understand that I need to take a quick second here to thank our sponsor for this hour of the show, Kitchen Center of Framingham at magnificentkitchens.com. They're one of the reasons why we're here able to have this conversation, and they do absolutely fantastic work. What is it that you would want, Jamarhl, for the governor or this mayor or the corporate community to do? And let me personalize it more. When I was at the old hip-hop station, people would ask every day, are you going to talk about the shooting in Dorchester, Roxbury, or Mattapan? And I would say, no, I'm not going to talk about it, because if the people in the neighborhood aren't upset about the shooting, why should I be upset about the shooting? And that was my real attitude. Is I'm prepared to say this is a crisis and an outrage if the people living in the neighborhoods are in a crisis and an outrage. But I don't hear a lot. You just did an excellent job of kind of describing this kind of nonchalant attitude. I hate that phrase you used because it's so telling, regular killings. So what do you want, like the listeners of the New England Network, Mayor Menino, a geeky guy like Michael Graham, what do you want us to do? What can we do?
Okay, well, one, I don't want to mischaracterize it as if, nobody cares and nobody's doing anything. There's a lot of very dedicated people, people like the Odoms, who have lost their son and then turned their life and dedicated it into, combating violence and promoting peace. People like the good people at the Louis D. Brown Institute. People like Mothers for Justice and Equality. People like Nancy Robinson from Where Did the Gun Come From? So there's a lot of people in the community, just regular old grassroots efforts of, regular community folks. Even City Councilor Tito Jackson, after years of not addressing this issue, let me say, has recently embarked on peace rallies every Friday in his
enough
district. So there are people who care and are trying to do something. In terms of what could Menino and Duvall do, one, it was proposed to Governor Patrick and the state legislature by, I'm sure, one of your favorite people, Senator Diane Wilkerson, that there was to be a commission on the study of young black males. This commission would study some of the, epidemics that seem to be going on with crime, unemployment, health care, and some of the factors that kind of make this violence happen. So that's one thing. I think the problem needs to be studied in a serious way, and that we need to put some of our best and brightest minds to study these social conditions that create this violence.
But one of the reasons I say that people in the community apparently don't care is because the police have such a difficult time, according to numerous media reports, getting people to step up and testify, to offer information so they can find the people who did the shooting. And I'm glad to say that there aren't a lot of stop snitching T-shirts left anymore, but for a while there, that was all the rage. So once again, what can a governor or a mayor or government or citizens outside the community do if the community is going to say, yeah, I know who shot, the guy down the street, but I'm not going to say anything?
Well, there's groups of black and Latino police officers, and their contention, which I agree with, is that, number one, when you have primarily white officers who are responding in areas that are predominantly black, Latino, and Cape Verdean, sometimes there's a communication barrier. Mm-hmm. And when you go into certain areas, like let's pick a place, let's say Orchard Park. When you go into Orchard Park and you begin canvassing the neighborhood, asking people questions, oftentimes these are some of the same officers who have a reputation in that same neighborhood of, let's say, not being so friendly and cooperative. So it's difficult for those people to come back and now try to build a rapport and a trust when there is none. So there needs to be a repair of the relationship between the Boston Police Department and the black community, and I think that...
But why am I canvassing the neighborhood? Why isn't the phone ringing? Look, if there's a murder down the street from where I live, the phones are going to ring if somebody knows something. Well, why would you have to canvass the neighborhood?
Well, once again, see, then you bring up, things. First of all, they've created the anonymous tip line, and they've had some success there. But also, too, if I know that Johnny down the street shot a kid, and I tell, what is to protect me from Johnny shooting me or Johnny's friends? So not so much the stop snitching attitude, but the fact that we live in a zone that is not protected like others. And in terms of what can the government do, Dan Conley, Mayor Menino, Duvall Patrick could tighten up their witness protection program because it's, been notoriously lacking for years. Now, they'll all tell you that they do a bang-up job.
Listen. Right now, there are people listening who are saying, yeah, but how about the people that can do the most doing something, which is that the people in Dorchester, Roxbury, and Mattapan could stop shooting each other. That would be a great solution. And then there would be no need for any programs or anything. You could just do in Dorchester what happens in Duxbury or in whatever and just not shoot people.
Well, of course. But that's a very simplistic thing. The fact of a person who is shooting a person, that denotes that they may have some mental issues and certainly some anger, social issues. But that's like saying, well, if all these women beaters would just stop beating their wives, or if all these rapists would just stop raping. So there are a lot of people out there who do things that we know are not the best things for them to do. Why they do it, that needs to be examined. We need to work on a preventative measure of trying to eliminate some of those social ills that lead to that type of thing. But at the end of the day, there's some crazy people out there, and we may not be able to reach those crazy people.
Should be distributed equally across the Commonwealth, and the kind of crazy you're talking about, specifically violence, is not. Jamarhl, we are way over time. I've kept you on the entire first half hour. I'd keep you on another hour if I could. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for what you're doing at Blackstonian.com.
And if I may, before I go, thank you. Next time you peruse the site, please look in the right-hand column a little bit down, and there's a button there that says donate.
You got it.
Thank you, sir.
We believe in shameless plugs. We're going to have you over for our That's a Wrap one Friday, and afterwards you and I can go get a beer or something, okay?
Please do. Make me a co-host.
We'll definitely do that. No doubt about it. 781-433-0404. I am Michael Graham.
The Natural